If you look back across the entire history of human existence, a staggering number of people have died because someone else decided they shouldn't exist. We're talking about war, genocide, and colonization. Putting an exact number on the total loss of life is practically impossible. Reliable census data didn't exist for most of human history, and historians fiercely debate where direct violence ends and secondary factors like forced starvation, economic collapse, and introduced disease begin. Based on modern demographic studies and conflict research, the combined toll is generally estimated to be between 300 million and 1 billion people. Let that sink in. Somewhere between 300 million and 1 billion lives. To put that into perspective, statisticians estimate that roughly 117 billion humans have ever lived. That means somewhere between 0.25% and a full 1% of all humans who have ever existed died due to organized human violence or its immediate brutal aftermath. When you look at a number that massive, you have to ask why. If you strip away the historical pretext, the shifting ideologies, and the complex geopolitics of any given era, you are left with three core psychological and structural engines: power, control, and hatred. A massive portion of historical violence has nothing to do with personal animosity. It comes down to cold, calculated utility. Think of resource extraction. Empires and colonizers rarely invaded simply out of spite. They did it for land, gold, oil, spices, or forced labor. To secure those resources, they required absolute control. For most of history, rulers operated under a zero-sum mindset. For their nation to grow and be secure, their neighbors had to be weakened or subjugated. While leaders are motivated by power and control, they can't convince millions of ordinary citizens to kill or die without leveraging human psychology. This is where hatred and othering comes in. Humans have an evolutionary vulnerability to tribalism, an in-group versus out-group mentality. To justify taking someone else's land or exterminating a population, perpetrators rely on dehumanization. They convince their people that the target group is inferior, dangerous, or an existential threat. Whether it's religious crusades, radical purity doctrines, or radical political purges, hatred is systematically manufactured and weaponized to make mass violence feel not just permissible, but morally necessary to people carrying it out. The desire for power and control provides the motive, while the weaponization of fear and hatred provides the means. So who are the people making these decisions? If we don't look at race, nationality, or era, what kind of person actually ends up in the positions of power to orchestrate these atrocities? When political scientists and psychologists look at these individuals, a remarkably consistent, chilling profile emerges. They almost always exhibit what psychologists call the dark triad of personality traits. Machiavellianism, for example. They are master manipulators who believe the ends always justify the means, viewing human beings as chess pieces to be used or discarded. They possess traits of narcissism, an extreme sense of entitlement and grandiosity, genuinely believing they are historically destined to lead and that standard moral rules do not apply to them. A profound lack of empathy that allows them to sign a decree sentencing millions to death without losing a night's sleep. They have a high social dominance orientation. They view the world as a strict dog-eat-dog hierarchy. In their mind, equality is a myth, and there are only two options in life: to be the oppressor or to be the oppressed. And finally, they possess an absolute conviction of certainty. They have an unwavering, rigid belief in their own rightness. Because they believe they are serving a higher good, whether that's purifying a nation or saving an empire, They view any amount of cruelty as a necessary price to pay. However, these individuals don't succeed in a vacuum. A person with these traits in a healthy, accountable system gets checked by laws and institutions. They transition into mass perpetrators when a society experiences instability, humiliation, or economic collapse. Under those conditions, a desperate population becomes highly susceptible to a charismatic strongman promising order, vengeance, and a return to glory. This brings us to one of the most agonizing dilemmas in political philosophy. If the people in power are willing to kill indiscriminately, does pacifism actually work? If pacifism is defined as an absolute non-resistance to physical force, history shows it struggles heavily when facing radical evil. Nonviolent resistance works by creating a moral crisis for the oppressor. It holds up a mirror to their cruelty, hoping to shame them or pick their conscience. Unfortunately, for that lever to work, the oppressor must actually have a conscience, or at least care about their international standing. If you're dealing with a totalitarian regime willing to systematically liquidate an entire population, absolute pacifism can inadvertently look like compliance. This is why history forced the development of just war theory. The heavy realization that while peace is the ultimate goal, taking up arms can be a moral necessity if it is the only available means to defend innocent lives from total destruction. Let's be honest about the structural reality of the world. The people who orchestrate these conflicts rarely face the consequences. They sit in secure bunkers, boardrooms, or palaces, shielded by their wealth and the very system they control, while working-class people are sent to the front lines to die. True accountability at the international level is incredibly rare because the legal frameworks are often built by the dominant global powers themselves. If the system protects the powerful, and if waiting for an oppressor to change their mind doesn't work, then what is the solution? The logical conclusion is that the collective power of organized, united people is the ultimate check on tyranny. Standing up doesn't just mean fighting fire with fire. History shows that true unity manifests in a few powerful ways. It looks like mass non-cooperation. Rulers only have power because people obey them. Dictators cannot fight wars if the factories refuse to make weapons, the trains don't move troops, and the public refuses to comply. Mass civil disobedience can paralyze a regime from the inside out. It looks like targeting the enablers. A dictator is just one person. They rely on generals, oligarchs, and media operations. When a united public shifts its focus to making life miserable for those enablers, the regime's foundation cracks. And finally, when a population is being actively wiped out and all social institutions have collapsed, history shows that armed self-defense becomes the tragic but necessary shield required to physically stop the violence. This brings us to the deepest paradox of human history. Sometimes to achieve a lasting peace, a society must be willing to actively, fiercely fight for it. True peace isn't just the absence of conflict, it's the presence of justice. And when those in power use violence to destroy justice, they cannot be reasoned with. They have to be structurally, collectively stopped. So this is something that's been on my mind for a while, thinking about, what would be the best way to deal with the situation that we're in now with the current state of the world, geopolitics, and all of that. And I think the unity and mass non-cooperation of the people is the first step, right? Looking out for each other and trying to protect each other like groups like the Black Panthers were doing before they were systematically destroyed. You know what I mean? But this is all food for thought. I think I'll leave this video here for now. If you enjoyed, make sure to drop a like and a comment and subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos. It all helps out a ton. But I hope you enjoyed. I'll leave it here for now, and like I say at the end of all my vids, I love you, stay safe, good luck, and take it easy.